The imposter syndrome, when you feel like a fraud despite all your achievements and accomplishments, is something that the New York Times has written about quite extensively. Every one of these articles views the imposter syndrome as a weakness that you need to overcome, but what if we flip this phenomenon on its head? To recognize that knowing what we don't know is not a sign of weakness, but a strength to seek knowledge and collaboration. That it's exactly this kind of mindset that leads to you pushing against any professional box or ceiling to learn new skills as part of your long-term career arc. I'm Jack Wayne, and on this channel we talk about science, technology, and careers, and this is another entry in our Tips Digest series. Let's keep talking about the imposter syndrome today, but not just dealing with it, but to instead leverage it, exploit it even, to push our professional learning in a positive direction. I'm going to be comparing my notes against the New York Times How to Overcome Imposter Syndrome Guide. Where do we leave off last time? Phase 2, out of the box. Once you've been doing your job for a while, you'll get better at it. If you're in an average, non-toxic workplace, after a year or so, I'd be very surprised if you still felt like an imposter. If you do, I think that says more about your workplace than you, and you should either speak to someone about improving your mental health and or find a different workplace. Because at this point, your duties should no longer be a mystery. You should have a clearly laid out routine, Monday through to Friday, and this is totally fine. In fact, it can be great. For most people, a job is a job, and work-life balance is fantastic in theory, because this so-called comfort is dangerous in the current economy. Large enterprises are not in the business of rewarding individual employees. They're in the business of developing systems that can replace any employee. If your job description is a little too clear, and everything you do is itemizable on a spreadsheet, how certain are you that all the things you do are still going to be valuable in 5 years' time? Try this exercise. Write everything that you do at your job for a whole week into a spreadsheet, or let's say a whole month, and tabulate which of these can be given to someone else to do, let's say with 2 weeks or a month of training, and it then no longer becomes your job. Now, if you work in a field that's very hard to get into, with say 10 years of training needed as a prerequisite, you might feel a little safer. But even then, there's tens of thousands of doctors and lawyers graduating every single year. Can you be so sure that you'll still be rare and valuable, and that this value will continue in perpetuity? It all sounds quite heartless, and you hear terrible stories about redundancies after 20 years of service at the same company, but you really can't take this personally. It's just the way of the market. So as individuals, we have to protect ourselves from being too well defined. To be put into a box or to be reduced down to a list of replaceable duties is to start the countdown on when your stock will begin to drop. The only way I know how to break out of this is to reinvent yourself by always trying to find a new skill that will redefine your value. The New York Times How to Overcome Imposter Syndrome Guide recommends that you make a list of at least 10 things that show you are just as qualified as anyone else for the role you're in or the role you're seeking. Try to find evidence that you're less qualified than anybody else, and see if there's any evidence or if there's something that actually makes you more qualified. I think this is a really helpful strategy for self-affirmation, but we can do one better. On top of the 10 things you can already do, think of 5 that you'd like to be able to do. Odds are many of these are just an extension of your existing skill set. And all you need to do is have a grasp of some new vocabulary, as well as applying it in different contexts, and voila, you'll know as much about it as anyone in a short amount of time just by revisiting stage 1, the Googleables, again and again. As soon as you start thinking about branching out though, the imposter comes knocking. You're so tired after work, you don't have time to think or learn new things. What will your family think? What will your boss or colleagues think? Maybe it's a stupid idea after all, and you're not so sure if it's worth your time. So let's go back to our 3-stage uncertainty framework, the Googleables. This is where I would invest the vast majority of your time at this phase. There is so much that you can learn purely online that it's honestly staggering. Computer programming, writing, communication, music production, health and fitness. There's not that many reasons left for you not to learn something in this day and age, especially if you really want to learn it. The crazy thing is that most of it will be free, well, except for your time. But hopefully it's something you enjoy doing as well. For me, it was when I started photography, and there wasn't a whiff of anything strategic or job related. I just want to take good travel photos when I went on my honeymoon and take great pictures of my daughter as she grows up. It wasn't until I started making my photos public that the imposter syndrome set in. Photography has changed a lot over the last few years, and many old school photographers are still very persnickety about what the rules of the genre may be. But I kept at it, managed even to sell some prints, had some photos featured on big photography channels on Instagram. So, okay, maybe there's something to this. I kept at it. Stage 2, the mentionables, is also echoed in the New York Times guide. Own your accomplishments, be proud of them, and don't try to explain them away with pure luck or help from others, although of course those are factors. When you are mentioning the possibility of learning new skills to your professional network, put together a pitch. What you've done previously, what you've been successful at, and why you will learn this new skill, and this new skill will bring you, your colleagues, and your managers new value, efficiencies, or synergies. Most jobs tend to reward employees for past performance with the hope that it predicts the upward trajectory of future outcomes. So the more you can own your previous accomplishments and put them together as part of a compelling pitch, the more opportunities you'll have to learn new things. Stage 2, the mentionables. Once you've done some learning and found out some background, you can accelerate your learning, lessen the learning curve by talking to someone who's already using that skill in some way. You can start with your friends and family. Do they already know someone who's doing this? If you're also comfortable talking about this with your coworkers or your boss, you can cast a wider net again of hopefully finding someone to mentor you. For me, this was translating my photography training into making videos. Now, the two might sound similar, but there's a huge gulf between the two mediums, not to mention the potential risk of embarrassment and humiliation. None of my colleagues were making videos or wanted to make videos, and there was a few years there where it seemed like a huge waste of time. Not to mention the quality of my videos were terrible. I think one of my students called them hostage videos, like I was speaking at gunpoint for a ransom nobody wanted to pay. So nothing I made ever went public. I didn't have a channel, and of course the imposter comes knocking. It wasn't until I connected with the media production team at my workplace just to see their workflow that I overcame that sense of insecurity, at least enough anyway. What does the New York Times guide about the imposter syndrome say about stage 3, the untouchables? It talks about the power of visualizing success. Precisely how you'll navigate a situation successfully before it happens. Imagine yourself doing great in the interview, nailing the presentation, or in this case, applying the new skill you haven't yet learned at the highest level, and all the benefits it will bring to you and your organization. The opportunity to learn new skills is not a given or even a right in every workplace. You need to put together the pitch for why your manager should give you these learning opportunities. Stage 3 of the uncertainty framework, the untouchables. What's untouchable at this point is this question. Is the skill you're learning one that aligns with the future direction of your job or organization? Hopefully you picked a skill that is synergistic with your current role rather than an awkward pairing. Computer coding might be really useful for everything, but maybe something like web design would be a really good fit. Graphics and animation could be useful for marketing, and in my case, photography, which turned into videography. Turns out it's essential for communication and online teaching. Maybe your boss is so supportive that they'll even pay for you to have time off work to do some official training in the skill, but this will depend on how valued that skill is to them right at that moment, so pretty unlikely. Making videos and running this YouTube channel is simultaneously the most difficult and the best thing I've ever done, precisely because it aligns so well with everything I'm interested in doing for my career. So I use it for my online classes, I use it to help mentor other teachers, I leverage it to build professional networks, which has in turn led to invited talks at different conferences. Because it's so valuable in my job, I get to keep doing it, which never would have happened if A, I didn't want to feel like an imposter because I wasn't trying to learn new skills, or B, I let those feelings of insecurity initially overwhelm me. I'm already looking for the next round of insecurity. New skills to learn that build on top of these skills I already have. I'm starting a weekly newsletter, Crossover Connections on Substack, as well as a new podcast here, the Crossover Connections podcast. I'm sure they won't be very good to start with, and the imposter will come knocking yet again, but that is when I know I'm redefining my value. Have you already taken advantage of every free workshop or information session that the company offers? Have you already spoken to the people in your organization who have this skill set and assessed if it will be viewed as diminishing returns or additional synergistic gains if you then go ahead and develop that same skill set? Have you already visualized the new applications for these skills that are unique to your role and your context, and why this combination redefines you, making you even rarer and even more valuable. If you're interested in careers in science and technology, super competitive fields that require multifaceted skills, you may be interested in the full video about how to deal with the imposter syndrome across 3 phases of a typical career trajectory. If you go through multiple iterative cycles in learning new skills and reinventing yourself, you will be able to invite the imposter in when it suits you and keep them at bay when you need to. This will ultimately lead you to phase 3, leveling up. I'm Wang. Hope to see you next time.